Initially, we'd had a meeting here a couple of years ago and talked with the neighborhood as we were looking at the future of this building. And then through the construction project at the secondary campus, we realized that we could utilize this space for our 7th graders and that staff. So for 2 years, we housed all of our 7th grade students here while John Adams was getting renovated and ready for the 21st century, instead of having that 50-year-old building without any air conditioning and things that were failing. So we also had a renter that was in here last year for a period of time, so we were still storing things here and using this as a storage facility. And actually, even this year, we have a few things that are stored here as we complete that one-story portion of the secondary campus at the high school this year. So we still have some things stored in here, but really it's time for the board to kind of revisit what's the future of this property, what's important, and there are lots of options. Ramona will share some information that she has about selling the property. She's done some research for the board, and Todd can kind of talk about the infrastructure, what it kind of costs us to run it at this point in time. And then we'll kind of open it up for questions from all of you or comments. That sound okay? All right, so Ramona, do you want to go first and talk about kind of what you learned based on what the board had talked about and asked you to do the last time?
You had asked me to check to see if we could restrict the property, and yes, we do have the ability to restrict it in the bid documents or in the sales documents. And yes, it will stand up in court. I think we had talked about, maybe donating it or selling it to a church if they wanted it for, a price or whatever. And we have to remember that that's a private entity, so we would have to jump through a lot more hoops in order to do that. And you have to have a public hearing, and then we'd also have to give all the other people that would be interested in purchasing at the same opportunity. It's easier if we would sell it or donate it to a city or a municipality, other taxpayers, then there's not as many hoops to jump through. One thing that he kept questioning me, are we restricting it too much that we're not going to get the best value for the property? Like, we're saying that we want to restrict it and have it just be green space, but what if somebody wants to build it and put lots of that? That's just one thing that he was questioning. We want to get it for the highest and best use. Are we protecting the neighbors over all the other taxpayers of the district? He said, if we want to have it as the green space, or if somebody wants it, then they can buy it. He said we have a duty to all the taxpayers of the district. He said not to be negative, but we have to keep that in mind, that when we're selling it, if we want to move forward and bid it, whatever we want to do. Did that answer your questions?
So just for people who maybe weren't here when we had the first conversation, it was that the neighborhood was really tied to the green space. That was a really important part of this area. And so one of the questions Ramona asked when she was looking at legal advice on this was, if we put this up for sale, can we restrict that the green space would need to stay? But then on the other flip side of that, I heard you say, Ramona, that is that restricting it too much and not getting the best value for the taxpayers out of the property that's here, which makes it a little more, gives us a little more information than what we had before in terms of how we make a decision, how you make a decision as a board. Do you guys have other questions about that? Todd, you want to kind of just talk about the
Do we need to stand up? I'll stand up because I heard some people.
Actually, Anita, I'm sorry, it
Okay.
just came to me. I think didn't we ask for the actual cost that we would have to, what it would cost us to actually put it up for sale?
Oh,
so that we
The
knew
whole
what
process, yeah.
what that cost would be if we chose to do that.
Probably legal fees would probably be from $2,700 to $3,000. And publications and all that would probably be at the tops at, around $5,000 to sell it. So check that out first.
So the $5,000 would be on top of the 2,700?
I think that would be all included.
So, all included 5,000 approximately. Thank you.
And Ramona, just to clarify, what is it, or maybe I should ask Todd, what does it cost per year roughly to maintain this building and the green space?
The actual cost to run the building, we just got the numbers on last meeting that we had about this, and I think we were in $35,000 range. Is that what it was for the, we really don't use that many utilities right now just because the building's inhabited, or not inhabited. We have gas pretty much exclusively and a little bit of electricity. When we bring people into the building, then of course that escalates dramatically. The thing that we are looking at right now is our mechanical systems, our steam boiler, which keeps the building warm and safe during the real cold times. That's the biggest challenge over here. We aren't here every day. If the boiler was to go down and we're not very timely on our building checks, we could lose some water pipes just overnight like that. So we're over here as often as we can get here to make sure everything's working well. So we have that small amount of utility usage. Right now, our roof's holding up. We're not seeing very much vandalism, if any, at all, thank goodness. And thanks to some of the neighborhood folks helping keep an eye on things. So as far as the building itself, right now, we're not chewing up and using up a lot of resource. However, that could change in a hurry. Our boiler was put in 1970, and that could be any day for that during the heating season. And usually on a boiler failure, a catastrophic failure is between $3,000 and $7,000 to get it back up and running. And we have to do it just as fast as we can because we have no backup to get in this building. So that's in the back of my mind during the winter months.
What would be our premiums on property and casualty insurance for this area? Because I assume we're still responsible for it, correct?
I would guess, we insure it all, so we get I would guess probably $250 to $500 per year for the insurance. I don't think it's that great. It's based more on value and square footage.
Okay, how about the liability? Somebody breaks in, gets hurt, could we be liable in that situation?
Yes, that's a different story.
That'd be a different story entirely. Window breakage, we self-insure up to a certain point?
Yes, we have $1,000 deductible on property.
Okay.
I don't think I heard on the playground we'd be liable. I mean, if we were at fault, if the equipment wasn't, they'd have to prove negligence or fault on the, on the school.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have any supervision here either. Of course, I guess you haven't had it on weekends, but when you don't have supervision, that's a whole other ballgame as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is the $35,000 include snow removal and mowing and all of that?
I'm sorry, Todd, what did you say, to repair the boiler, or we'd have to replace it?
I don't think we'd be in replacement mode at that time. To replace it would be, astronomical. But a repair on a failed tube or an in sheet, firebox failure, anywhere between $3,000 and $7,000.
So when you say astronomical, what does that mean to me?
$200,000 plus to replace it.
Any other questions for Todd or Ramona? I guess at this point then, we'd open up for anybody that's here this evening to answer questions you may have or listen to ideas that you may bring forward. Just be real informal.
Good evening, board.
Hey, Dave.
Lieutenant. This is not the only town I've lived in, and my children went to school in different buildings. I went to school in many buildings here in town. My grandchildren just graduated out of middle school in Muscatine, and their building is ancient compared to this building. They have 5 Fortune 500 companies in that town. I know there's expense on this building. There's also expense on those other new buildings that we just built and overhauled. I think we haven't spent our money very wisely, and I think it's a terrible shame to see this magnificent building go to the wrecking ball. I wish that someone would come and offer a decent price so you people won't look so bad. It's the taxpayers of Mason City and the surrounding area of Mason City that built all those fancy buildings. If Mason City was growing, I graduated with a class of 360. My wife graduated with a class of 416. Which doesn't make sense today with our small class that we have in comparison. But yet, we've rebuilt every building here in town. And I thought I read in the paper that, you know, you got plenty of money. If you want to tear this down, you got plenty of money in that one account where for bricks and mortars and boilers and all of that, like $200,000. Boiler that's in this building, if it is not up to inspection, I go to the First Methodist Church. We got a big boiler there. I've been down in the furnace room and saw them take it apart and put it back together. The boiler looks like it's old, but I just feel that this is such a bad experience for Mason City. It's sinful what the board and the superintendent has done. Sinful. Now, if we needed a new building, we didn't have enough space, fine. I'll be the first one in line to give you money. But this magnificent building is just a dinosaur. I'm sorry, that's my feeling. I've been to some of the school boards, and I've voiced my opinion about spending my money wisely. And this is the most unwisely spent money that we've done in the last few years. I just absolutely can't believe, like over there on the junior high. So we shouldn't have any bad roofs or boilers in our area for years to come.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else have any questions?
Is there an issue of the building like asbestos or anything like that, or has all that been taken care of?
There is still asbestos in it.
Some of the flooring materials in the building still are asbestos, and that is the square VCE tile you see in a lot of the classrooms.
Right.
But Mason City was very progressive back in the early 90s in removing a lot of the asbestos in the buildings in the thermal regions, which is the piping and the old boiler racks and so forth. So the removals at this time, or the costs associated this time, would be much simpler and less complex to take care of prior to any work done in the building. And that would be for any renovation or anybody else moving into that. Work would probably need to be done also.
Question of, and I don't, if the folks here, I mean, are you folks that live in this area, or, yeah, what are things that you want to see on this project?
I'm kind of like him. I hate to see this building, I mean, and I've not been in this building before. But it just seems like it's too good of a building just to get rid of. Surely there's somebody that, you know, would buy it or that rent it to or whatever. what I wanna see is that green space out here for the kids. I still wanna keep that around. There are so many kids, especially during the summer, that are out there on the playground. Some of them are just up there with that little ball field there with their bat and balls and whatever. And I would hate to lose that for the kids. That gives them something to do instead of getting into mischief or doing something else.
Bob, if I could mention too, the building is actually made up of 3 different buildings. We're sitting in the old 1923 building right now, the old original building. And if you go to the west, you move into the 1953 edition, which is the one story that you see that shoots out flat over the backside. And then you come around this way, and in the 70s, this last edition was put onto the south. And some of the old equipment that we use in the building, like the old HVAC, the rooftop zone air conditioners on the roof, are original to that 1970 structure. And I can't believe to this day we have compressors that are still in there that run, but they're not good. In fact, I don't like to be standing next to them when they run. They're getting really noisy. So it's not just so much the building that we look at. We look at it all facets, all all the heart, the lungs, all the internal components. They're aging too. And they're just not getting any better. But the other 2 buildings aren't near the structure that the old one is. And I kind of agree with you there. This is a stout old building here in the middle, but the other 2 really aren't. There's not much there. They don't heat well. Lots of air leaks. Lots of infiltration from the outside. So we've got the good old building, but we've got some other building here that's not so good.
I'd be interested in knowing if the neighbors have had any conversation around ideas for the structure, what could be here. If it wasn't a school, what possibilities, or just conversation maybe that's gone on, or even in the community and other places. People have ideas about what to make this out of and what it could become.
The only thing I heard that people have talked about is they don't want it to be apartment houses, low income or whatever. We don't want that in the neighborhood because we have a good neighborhood. We don't have no theft going on or nothing like that, and usually if you have a low income area here, you're gonna have problems.
The question I have for you all is, as Ramona pointed out when she sought out sort of the input from the legal counsel, more than likely if we attempt to sell, the bind that the board is going to find itself in is, do we put a rider or a restriction on it to require that the green space be kept, knowing that that's going to really limit any potential buyers? Or do we not put that restriction on there and sell it, but that means anything could be put on the property? So what we would be doing is maximizing the sale price for the district and all of the taxpayers of the district, as she pointed out, or do we restrict it and take a lower price, attempting to accommodate the neighborhood, if you will, the request for the green space? And I doubt it's just this neighborhood. I think Mason City as a whole appreciates its green space. However, we don't have the rest of the folks here to ask. So I'd appreciate your input on that.
I use the green space every day during the summer. I have a daycare. My kids are over there, we go over there every day in the afternoon or in the morning. And it is full of kids. There's kids playing ball over there, there's kids playing on the equipment, there's adults walking around the track. It is used every day.
A lot.
And there is not any other green space in this neighborhood for them to go to. For kids to socialize, to not sit in front of videos, to get out and exercise. And it, like I said, it's used, I'm here almost every day in the summer. And it's full of kids. And it's just not my kids. I mean, there's several other daycares that come bring their kids over. There's other neighbor kids that come and play. They play basketball. it's busy all day long. And I think it would be very, very bad for this area not to have a space, especially since the school system is for our kids. Because our kids start when they're 1 and 2 years old, learning how to socialize together. And if we don't have a place for them to go, well, I can't pack up my kids and take them to the park, to another school ground. So this is where we come and meet other kids. And with no other place in this neighborhood, there'd be no other place for the kids to go.
I got a question. Would it be unheard of for the school district to go to either the county or the city to see if there's a need with those two entities for office space or some type of a partnership in order to use this facility and keep the green space and make the people happy and satisfy some of their needs, that kind of thing, and maybe even if the school needs a part of the building or something, work some multi-agency situation out. I don't know if that's possible, but
You know, Matt, it's a good point, because when we were looking at the Washington building,
Right.
there was that discussion that was going on around the free clinic and the daycare and the Parks and Rec, and that was located in a good spot, and actually that space, Charlie Brown getting that building and that green space has kept that for the neighborhood, but also they have partnered now with us in providing 4-year-old preschool, which has been a really great benefit for the children of the community, especially. So we've had some conversations with the city in the past, and we can certainly have those again. And then certainly if you know people that you think might want to partner, I think that would be another option for the board to consider as well. Ramona, when you talk regarding the real estate, did you talk about whether or not the board could separate the two, if they could separate the green space from the building space and sell it separately?
I think, yes, we can do that.
Okay. So they could sell or do something with the green space to keep it and then just sell the footprint of what's here in terms of the building space. Okay.
We'd have to publish it that way
Yeah.
for the bid. So I'm assuming that you would want to take it out to bid. that
If
way.
you separate it though, who would insure that property out there, or who's liable for that piece of property? Who
Whoever
buys that half of it?
How did you do the Monroe Park, when the Monroe
Yeah.
School was torn down and that's left as green space?
The city
The city.
City bought that property
bought it.
and maintains it.
And-
What was the price on Roosevelt when you sold it? What'd you sell Washington for? When you sold
I want to say
I
$175,000.
think that's right.
$1 million building. It's another one of those dinosaurs right now. Luckily, I went to Washington School. Beautiful school.
It's a perfect place for Charlie Brown. It really is. It's a wonderful environment for children, and that's how it was designed. If you really looked at the size of things in that building.
Well, I went to grade school there.
Yeah.
It was very nice.
Yeah.
And,
what about a gift from the school district to the city or the county? Is that unheard of, or is that an odd choice, or has that ever been thought of? Could you just say, hey, take it and use it, do what you want? And
Well, I think we have to have the agreement. What really happened with
Well, right.
Monroe was, remember, we were going to deed it to the Salvation Army, and then the neighbors came and said, no, they didn't want the Salvation Army in their neighborhood. So
Okay.
then the neighbors said that I think they formed a coalition. Do you remember, Bob? Were you on the board then?
That was not
I think they formed a coalition, and then the city said that they would take it over, so we sold it to the city for $1.
well, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Find a taker that has some ideas, keep it as it is in some fashion, so that people can stay happy.
I know Brent Trout, when I talked to him, probably within the last year, it's probably been 6 months ago, city actually, it was Parks and Recs that they were looking for at that time. And they're also in the Washington building. They share that with Charlie Brown.
Right.
When I talked to him the last time, he said that the city wasn't interested, they didn't need any more property at this point in time. But we can broach the subject again. I mean, we would,
I would probably go to an elected official like an Alex Kuhn probably, or a park board, somebody like that. Start with them, because he's going to take his orders from his bosses. So I'd go to the bosses and convince them, not to tell you how to do your job, but because I don't think there's any other way for this to work. Is you're going to have to go to one of these other entities, I think.
Ramona, can I ask a point of clarification? Did the school cover the cost of the demolition of the Monroe building prior to the school district purchasing it? So that, that was part of it as well, is that they purchased not the building and the green space,
Sure.
just the green space.
and it
Sure.
would have been a green space for a long time. I don't remember.
4 or 5 years anyway.
Oh, I'd say longer than that.
Where the school district maintained it before the city took it on. I don't know.
I'd have to look that
Four
up.
and a half acres of grass.
That's a great space.
And then Ramona, and I know you told us this before, but to help remind me and maybe to help the public understand too, one of my biggest concerns is if we would find a buyer for the property and they would get in here and within a year, it's like, oh, it's too much upkeep, we're just gonna tear it down. There's nothing that we can or would want to put into a sale agreement that says the building has to stay, or, I mean, we can, but it would probably limit our buying power, right?
The more restrictions you put on it, he said you're limiting who's going to buy it. I
But we,
think we did have somebody that was interested before when we shut it down. They had talked about putting computers in here.
Oh, that's right.
It didn't go anywhere. I mean, they had just kind of inquired, and I think, did you give them a tour, Todd?
I
You
think
remember?
I can recall these companies once, but they were here for a very short time. Very short time.
And North Iowa Christian School, I gave them a tour. I think they would still be interested. So, I mean, I really think that, like Mark had talked about, that we need to advertise and see what the interest is there. Until we do that, we
Don't really know.
don't know.
but even at that, if the bids come through and let's say, we have somebody comes through and they say their intent is to turn it into apartments, we would have the right to
There's right to refuse.
refuse of those.
Has anybody talked to Mercy? I mean, they're expanding all over town.
I noticed that.
They're all about blue zones and healthy green spaces or whatever. Well, what better place than this?
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
I'm just
Thank
thinking out of the box, but I'd go to somebody with money that is doing things in the community. I'd go to Mercy.
What about the Blue Zone Committee?
you. Blue Zone has no money. They don't have any money.
Let's give it to them for
But
$1.
if you're gonna sell it to anybody for $1, why can't you give it to the North Iowa Christian School for $1? Why can't you give it to the Blue Zone for $1? Seems like you wanna make money if there's money to make, but if there's no money for anybody to purchase it, let's just demolish it.
Well, and to build on what she says, any money you're going to make is going to bite you later when they tear it down or build apartments or refurbish the building into something that the neighborhood hates. Selling it is not going to be the answer. You need to partner with somebody that's a doer in the community.
I think last meeting, we talked about, we are all up for selling it to somebody for $1 even. Because we're saving $35,000 a year
Right.
by not having